In today's video, I want to go over a bunch of PlayStation 5 games updates. Bluepoint Games is teasing a big PlayStation 5 game that a lot of us are speculating on. Ubisoft has noted that they have 5 PlayStation 5 games in the works, including Watch Dogs Legion and Rainbow Six Quarantine, and it looks like those will be cross-generation titles. And also, coming from Sony directly, PlayStation 5 games development is proceeding smoothly, and Sony expects highly engaging gameplay experiences. We'll talk that at the end of this video. And before we get into everything, I just want to remind you guys to make sure you hit that subscribe button and hit the bell notification icon so you are always notified of uploads. And that definitely helps out the channel too, so we always appreciate that. But first up, let's talk about Bluepoint Games. They put out a tweet over on Halloween noting, quote, "So calm this spooky night, a symphony of rumors, not one but two, return from the shadow of resistance to dart home as black monsters escape twisted hills to Wonderland and siphon souls. Filter your candy collection, soft from solid, and be eco-friendly. Have a metal Halloween." Now, obviously, this could just be a Halloween-related tweet, but this really seems to be something related to the game they're working on, and of course, the majority of people think that they are working on a Demon's Souls remake. Of course, nothing has been confirmed at this stage, and the Texas-based developer is having fun with all of the speculation, and in order to celebrate Halloween, they put this out. But it does look like a Demon's Souls remake is in development. Colin Moriarty of the Sacred Symbols podcast noted that, and he is very reputable. It wasn't noted that if Bluepoint Games is working on it, but if you are doing a major remake of a PlayStation exclusive, Bluepoint Games seems to be as good of a decision to go with as any other, as they did do the Shadow of the Colossus remake, and that turned out to be incredible, and I believe that released last year, so it's been quite a while. Now, if you actually dissect the tweet, some of the franchises that have been referenced that you could come to a conclusion of is Castlevania Symphony of the Night, Demon's Souls, Metal Gear Solid, maybe Resistance, Siphon Filter, The Legend of Dragoon, and Twisted Metal. That was directly from Push Square. As far as a remake of any of those games, it can't be MGS. You would think they would have to work with Konami, and I just don't think anything like that's gonna happen. Castlevania Symphony of the Night would be really cool. I don't think it's gonna be Resistance, don't think it's gonna be Siphon Filter. Legend of Dragoon is like a meme suggestion. Like, some people wanted, there's this niche audience on the internet that really want a Legend of Dragoon 2 or a Legend of Dragoon remake. I don't think that's gonna happen, and I don't think Twisted Metal is gonna happen. Demon's Souls is really the only one I think makes a lot of logical sense. That's a game that released all the way back in 2009. Souls has exploded since then, and if we're not gonna get a Bloodborne 2 from now, a Demon's Souls remake as a PlayStation 5 launch title could be absolutely enormous, just because you look back to the PlayStation 4, what was the true first system seller for the PlayStation 4? It was in fact Bloodborne. So I would say if you launch the PS5 with that Souls-like game right out of the gate, and Demon's Souls, even though it would be a remake, it's a game so many people haven't played, and if you have played it, you probably think so highly of it that you would love to play a remake on the PlayStation 5. It would do very well as a launch title, and I've always been of the mindset, if the PlayStation 5 launches with like Horizon Zero Dawn 2 or a new game from Guerrilla and then the Demon's Souls remake as your big double header, that is a gigantic success of a launch, given that if you look at the PlayStation 4's launch, it was really nothing to write home about. You got Killzone Shadowfall, you got Knack, is that really anything amazing? Resogun was there, and then you rounded it out with a lot of third-party launches, and generally speaking, launch lineups for consoles aren't the best, but this generation I do think is going to be a little bit different, because we know that Microsoft is prepping up something big for Scarlet next gen, and you would imagine Sony with the PlayStation 5 would try to create something compelling for launch on the PS5 as well. So that's my 2 cents on that. Take that with a grain of salt for now, but Bluepoint doing some top trolling over Halloween. Alright, moving on from that, Ubisoft has 5 PlayStation 5 and Xbox Scarlet games in the works, and they are noted to be AAA titles. That's what they said during its most recent financial earnings call with their investors. Ubisoft recently published its earning figures for the first half of its current fiscal year, and also highlighted the targets for fiscal year 2021 and fiscal year 2022. Fiscal year 2021 will run from April 2020 through March of 2021, and as mentioned, Ubisoft intends to release all 5 of its upcoming AAA titles in that period of time for both current and next generation consoles, thereby referring to Sony's PlayStation 5 and Microsoft's Xbox Scarlet. They noted, in this overall context, we have decided to postpone the releases of Gods and Monsters, Rainbow Six Quarantine, and Watch Dogs Legion until 2020 to 2021. While each of these games already has a strong identity and high potential, we want our teams to have more development time to ensure that their respective innovations are perfectly implemented so as to deliver optimal experiences for players. This decision will have a very significant impact on our financial results for this fiscal year and goes against our recent successes in building a more stable development model. It was also added they will be on this generation and next generation of consoles, and they will take full advantage of all the new features that are coming with the machines, which are actually going to be extremely interesting for players. Ubisoft's Yves Guillemot said during the call, as you will be able to download a lot faster new content, the experienced players will experience better frame rates, so there are a lot of very good elements that will come with the new machines. So it looks like Gods and Monsters, Rainbow Six Quarantine, and Watch Dogs Legion will all be cross-generation titles, which I think makes all the sense in the world. It does paint the question of when are these games actually going to come out. Gods and Monsters was scheduled for like February 25th, Rainbow Six Quarantine was scheduled for Q1, and then Watch Dogs Legion I believe was scheduled for March 5th or early in March. And now you're pushing these games back significantly. I don't know if these games are gonna come out before the release of the next generation consoles and then they'll just get next gen ports, or if they're gonna wait until the next generation consoles drop and then release the games side by side with the next generation versions and the current gen versions. It's really interesting because, especially in the case of Watch Dogs Legion, I was expecting that we were gonna get a new Assassin's Creed in 2020, but if you're releasing Watch Dogs Legion later in 2020, do you really want to release two major Ubisoft open world games right next to each other? You could do that. Watch Dogs and Assassin's Creed are different from one another, but I just go back to EA and what they did with Titanfall 2 and Battlefield 1. Why do this thing where you're literally competing with yourself within this genre of open world games? There's gonna be a lot of crossover appeal with Watch Dogs and Assassin's Creed if they were released right around the same time in late 2020. Why release them right around the same time? At that point, do you push Assassin's Creed back and untraditionally release it in early 2021? I would honestly think that would be a better option. I just think it's a really bad idea to release Watch Dogs Legion and the next Assassin's Creed even a month apart, 2 months apart. I just don't think that's a very smart idea. Again, you're just competing with yourself. It'd be different if it was like you were releasing Gods and Monsters and Watch Dogs Legion right around the same time, because those are two completely, starkly different games. They have a significant contrast. In the case of Watch Dogs Legion and the next Assassin's Creed, both big budget open world games, and they do kind of compete with one another. Alright, lastly, I do want to share what Sony talked during their financial call. And during Sony's quarterly financial conference call for investors and analysts, Chief Financial Officer Hiroki Totoki talked about the upcoming PlayStation 5 and more. He mentioned that releasing PS5 in the holiday season 2020 is the most important step in developing the PlayStation platform, and he also added that development of PlayStation 5 is progressing according to plan, and Sony believes that development of games by Sony's development partners is progressing smoothly. He noted, quote, "We anticipate providing highly engaging gameplay experiences that both current users of PlayStation 4 and potential new users have come to expect." We also hear that profitability for PlayStation 5 will depend on the price of the console. Sony is analyzing the cost, the acceptable price in the market, and platform penetration, but no further information can be added on this at the moment. That being said, Sony is, quote, "very conscious of the level of profit for investors and for the marketplace." Very difficult balancing act here, and I think the price standpoint is going to be the biggest element of the PlayStation 5. Can they get away with another $400 price point? I am very skeptical that that is going to be the case, just because you look at all the hardware that they are fitting into the PlayStation 5. Ray tracing, the solid state drive, the CPU, GPU, all that stuff, to fit that in for $400, that is going to be very, very difficult. I do think a $450 or $500 price point does seem likely. However, $500 is that point where you're kind of pushing it. You're going to start pushing a lot of people away from actually buying the console. $400 is that sweet spot, and we saw it with the PlayStation 4. The PS4 was a gigantic success, and I think initially if you do drop the PS5 at $500, it will sell very well, and a lot of people will buy it in that initial holiday period. However, it's really about sustaining that longevity and having people constantly pick up the console and establishing a strong user base. Ultimately, with elements like backwards compatibility, if you offer compelling exclusives, if you just make the PlayStation 5 an incredible box, I do think ultimately people will pay the $500. However, that's just speculation on my part. $500 might be pushing it a little bit too far. I've even speculated on the idea of a $600 or $700 box that goes alongside a cheaper box, and you have both of the boxes on the market right away, essentially a PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 5 Pro right out of the gate. I don't think that's gonna happen, just because from a Sony standpoint, maybe they're looking at it as dividing the user base. But you release the PlayStation 4 Pro anyway, and I would rather just pick up the PS5 Pro right out of the gate instead of midway through the generation having another console I gotta buy on top of the base console that I already bought. That's just my 2 cents. And also, speaking of PlayStation Now, Totoki-san revealed that the total number of subscribers has exceeded 1 million as of this month, and according to him, this is a great step toward the goal of growing the subscriber base by 50% each year. So they would like to get, you would think, to 1.5 million next year and then continue to grow from then on. We'll see how PS Now develops as well, because that's going to be a very interesting talking point going into 2020. And that's going to conclude this video. Again, Bluepoint Games doing some top-level trolling over on Twitter. Ubisoft has 5 PlayStation 5 and Xbox Scarlet AAA games in the works, and PS5 games are developing smoothly, if Sony is to be believed. I imagine that they are. So that's going to wrap up this one. Sound off with all of your thoughts in the comment section down below. Thank you for watching, and goodbye. Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and if you're already subscribed, do us a favor and hit the bell icon. This way you'll be notified whenever we post a new video. That's the best way to keep up with all of our uploads, and we usually try to upload 2 videos a day. And with the bell icon hit, you'll be notified whenever we do upload a video. As always, thanks for watching.